Reese, one of the directors here at MLR. We set it up, it was about 6-7 years ago we set it up, just formulated out of many different things. My father had semi-retired from his old company. Me and my younger brother wanted to get into it more and actually set it up. We were doing a lot more for old customers of my dad's, and yeah, we just said, look, we want to set up a company, and he said, well, that's fine, we'll do it as a three, and let's make something special from it, really. Just passionate about the cars and turning these things into pieces of metal into something special at the end of it, really.
So you started as a kid, I suppose, that's all you've ever known?
Yeah. So literally as weekends, school holidays, anything like that, Christmas, New Year, it was with my dad, either at shows, track days, events, or just at the garage working as well. So yeah, proper been dragged through it with my younger brother.
And did you start off with the mindset of just solely Porsche, or was it?
Yeah, so it's always been just Porsche. So that's what my dad brought us up with as well. So he's been doing it, like I say, a long time now. And yeah, it's just Porsche. It's just, we'd been around other cars, like other exotic cars like Lamborghinis, Ferraris and stuff like that, and we always kept circling back to the Porsche brand. It was just a car that you could jump in, get in and enjoy, and it wasn't something that you're cautious about putting miles on or cautious about where you take it. It was more the case of it's a brand as a whole. They've got cars from a very affordable budget to cars that are completely obscene and way out of expectations for a lot of people. So you've got a massive scope within that. So the lads are heavily on the service side, so there's cars in and out all day, every day for different types of servicing, either minor service and major service, exhaust, wheel bearing, suspension, that kind of stuff. So the ramps are always busy with that. And then on the other foot, we've got like the custom builds or the restoration work. So the building that's joined onto this one, which is next door, as you've seen, that's like the body shop and fabrication area. So there's spray booths, there's jigs, there's rotisseries, there's lads on there doing all sorts of work on cars that range from a complete bare shell to a complete finished car, or crash damaged cars that, like I say, either go on the jig or anything like that. So from a broad perspective, we can kind of touch on every point. We do all our engine builds in-house, gearbox builds, we do a lot of interior work as well. So we try and do as much in-house as possible, and we can control as much of the quality as possible, because that's what we did find in the earlier stage, that when you're relying on other people, it's not really always the best quality that you're after, or the timescales are different. So it's doing everything in-house really enabled us to hone on the quality and stuff that we were producing.
Can we talk about your builds? Or that's the special part of the business. You've been out in the green.
Yep, so we went out in the green one, yeah.
And the car behind you as well.
Yeah, so the car behind me is my brother's car. That's kind of a bit of a creep and go project of his own. So it started off as just a basic 987 Cayman. He's completely gutted it inside. Again, put a 997 GT3 front end on it. Big 6-pot calipers, big brakes all around. We've built a full lightweight 3.7 engine for it, so lightweight pistons, rods, steel spun liners, lightweight flywheel, carbon inlet, like plenum chamber, everything like that, 82mm throttle body. The list keeps going on and on. KW suspension. So it's been a real, the car's a little bit of a mongrel of Porsche genuine parts. So again, the whole front end's genuine Porsche. All the interior and dash is 997 as well, so it's different to a Cayman. Even the rear bumper, it's a Boxster aero kitted bumper. So all the parts that we've been using are genuine Porsche parts. Just he's picked the best part from every different brand, every different model, should I say, and then just compiled it into his favourite car. And then the green car behind it, that's one of our like 996 builds that we're really trying to focus a lot more on. We've got a lot of orders that come from all over the world. They're starting off as a complete brand new build, so at the end of it you'll get a complete brand new car. All the cars get completely acid dipped and then e-coated, seam welded. The whole car inside and out is painted, base coat and lacquered, and stone chip and seam seal. So the whole car inside and out is just brand new. All the engines are built, the gearbox is built, all the suspension's gone through, the clocks are reset at 0, carbon Kevlar roofs, carbon bonnets, GT3 RS running gear on there, KW suspension. The engines, like I say, if you start from a 3.4, we can take it to a 3.7. If it's a 3.6, it then takes it to a 3.9. And there's different customizations that you can do within the engine if you want to do rods and cams and valve springs and retainers and stuff. So they can change massively depending on car to car. Again, with the builds, we do like different model variations of it as well. So you'll do we do an ST, which is like a sport tourer, still with the carbon roof and the 6-pot calipers and stuff, but it's got comfort seats inside. So no rear seats, the original GT3 seat delete essentially. And then we do a club sport, which is like the green one, so roll cage, bucket seats, seam welded, a little bit more rough and ready. That's on a narrow bodied car. Or we'll do a Carrera RS, which is started off life as a C4S that we turned into a complete 2-wheel drive car. So again, full RS suspension at the front, GT2 radiators. So it's a complete turbo bodied car that's 2-wheel drive. Kind of the car that Porsche never built.
Is that the purple car?
The red one that was outside, the dark red one, yeah. So again, we try and build the cars that Porsche never built, but again, using all Porsche stuff. So you're not massively modifying something that has never been built. It's just a case of you almost, again, picking good parts from other cars and trying to make the best version of that.
The customer has control over what they want. You guide them, or you don't go, you have this choice or this choice, or do you just guide them?
It's kind of just get involved, come down and get involved. So a lot of the cars, like quite a few cars that are here have come from the States and from Singapore. So we do a lot of Zoom calls with them or video calls now and then, almost on like a daily basis as we're building the car. And a lot of the times they'll say, well, what would you recommend on this platform? I want something that's a bit like a sport tourer, but I also want this, and this. Well, we can say, well, you can either do standard Carrera 2 hubs with the 6-pot calipers, or you can put RS hubs and again, tailor each car exactly to how that customer wants it. Again, there's a lot of customers that can struggle to see what the finished product's going to look like. And I think that's just basically on, they'll take our recommendation of, I think that might look better than a different contrasting colour than what they might think, because obviously for us, we're doing it day in, day out. We can kind of see what it's going to look like at the end. I mean, we've specced up loads of cars and I can picture exactly what the car's going to look like and inside and out before we've even built it. So yeah, it's definitely a two-way street. We'll put some ideas out there, say, well, if this is kind of what car you want, and they'll come back and say, oh yeah, I want X, Y, and Z. And then again, every car is individual to the individual themselves. A lot of people who kind of diss the water-cooled cars are a lot of people who haven't actually had one. It's a lot of like new people coming into Porsche that go on the forums and read online and find out obviously the air-cooled is the best one. Now, I'm not saying that the water-cooled cars are so much more better than the air-cooled one. They're just a lot more usable. You can do a lot more with them. They come with a lot more power to start with. They come with a lot more mod cons and, like I say, a lot more creature comforts, but it's still an analog car, especially on the 996 platform. The air-cooled cars are fantastic. They just, the price point is so significantly higher. They start at a higher amount and parts are so much more expensive, so the upkeep of them cars are a lot more expensive than the rest. I hear the dog. Hello, yeah. Thank you. So yeah, it's a very difficult point on that aspect. I mean, we do a lot of builds from either one. We do a lot of the 993 Speedster builds. We do a lot of 964 RS, like recreation builds, where we'll turn them into a complete factory RS. 3.8 barrels and pistons, obviously, do all the changes to the actual body of the car that they need. So we can do them on every platform, really. But for us, as cars, as like a usable car, we prefer the water-cooled stuff because it's just a lot more usable.
Yeah. And in terms of obviously design I live in relationship, talk a little bit about that. How do you find design I live in?
Yeah, so it works hand in hand. It's really good. So obviously with the next day delivery, it works fantastic. And there's a lot of parts that you guys stock that we can't either get from main dealer or can't get from a local supplier. Again, weird and unique stuff, not just as much as the servicing side, but it definitely helps in the sense of if we're really struggling for stuff, that we know that it's there, it's available, and we can get it in the next day.
And how do you find, do you deal with Kev? Is that you deal with?
So we deal with Kev, Sam, Daryl. Yeah, we kind of deal with the whole team really. Again, I've got like a WhatsApp with Sam and Daryl. So if I need anything, they'll send me a photo of the pet so I can double check it. Because there's a lot of things on the pet system that will list it saying something else, and it might be a different part. So it's definitely almost on like a friend basis essentially, that we can just pick up the phone, ring them. I know someone's going to answer straight away. If not, they'll say, just give me 2 seconds, I'll give you a call straight back, and they always do. And yeah, I've rang them up at like 4:30 on a Monday night before, and they've actually got stuff out the door that day, so it's then with me first thing on Tuesday. So yeah, it is a real good customer basis to have, and like I say, as a supplier, it's fantastic, because I don't get that with a lot of other suppliers. It's email them and wait a few days for them to respond, whereas with Design 911, it's just a case of I ring someone up, someone answers, and then the next day the part's there. So it does help. Any place that we can all get involved in, we do. So we all do welding, we all do spraying work, we all do engine builds. It's me not as much as I'd like to, because it's booking work and stuff like that, yeah. But yeah, I think everyone's kind of honed in on their own skills, and we kind of utilise that as much as possible. We know who's good at what, and everyone kind of sticks to that role. But if we're short, not like short staffed as such, but if we're short on something, if one of them's away on holiday, then another one can jump in and fill that role, and they know exactly what they're doing. So we kind of train all the lads to do in every kind of aspect of work, not just one particular thing. I want to try and get the lads more honed in on the air code stuff. A lot of the stuff that's almost like a dying breed now, because a lot of the older blokes are retiring, and a lot of the new lads that are coming in are only working on new cars. So a lot of our lads, or virtually all of them, will know where clips, bracket bolts, trims go, which is, again, it's quite lost on a lot of places. We have a lot of cars that come in from either other specialists or other workshops all around the world, and they've built a car, and it's just, you'll find small things that you think, that shouldn't be there. It should, and the lads are picking up on that, which is really, really good from our perspective, because we know that, again, that every car that goes out has got to be right, and we're pretty OCD with things being in the right way and facing the right way and stuff like that. So yeah, I think training them up to touch every model variation of car, I think is the best way forward. So the red car that's outside, I think he's done about 20 or 30,000 miles since we built that, and that was only like 2 years ago. The green car, he's done 8,000 miles in it, and they're constantly in use. The cars all over the world, again, the cars that are in America, they're always being used, and like I say, we'll fly over maybe once every year and spend 2 or 3 weeks out there and just do maintenance on it, oil changes, checking everything. Yeah. So there's one of our clients has got a shop that he's basically built just for storing cars that we've built, and we've put a ramp in there, and we've got a toolbox and everything like that, and we'll just go over and we'll spend 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and we'll be working whilst we're there, but we're just maintaining all the cars that we've sent over to the States, so at least we can keep on top of anything. If they've got any niggles or anything like that, or I think, that could be changing again, and then it's constant R&D from stuff that we're building here.
You've got plans to move?
Yeah, so fingers crossed. We're just waiting. We've had to put planning applications in to change the building how we want to do it. But yeah, so fingers crossed, this time next year we should be in a nicer environment and a little bit warmer, hopefully. That's the only downside to this place. But yeah, hopefully it'll be able to match the quality of cars that we're building. I like this building, it's brilliant, it's been really convenient, but I just think where we're building and how we're building needs to step up just as much as the cars have. So I want it to kind of like reflect each other. But yeah, so fingers crossed it'll be a nice upgrade, and I think the lads are really excited for it as well. So it should be pretty cool.
How did you come about doing those the Speedsters? Like what happened there? Did someone just randomly ask you?
Yeah, it was a kind of a mixture. So I think the first one that my dad did was in 2012. Yeah, I think it was 2012, and what it was a client that he'd known for a long time. Come and wanted him to build a 964 Speedster, like a custom one, and he wanted it as a Tiptronic, an automatic, because he struggles to drive a manual car. And they got talking, and the cost to actually convert one into a Tiptronic with the loom and everything would probably outweigh most of the cost than just a regular 964 Speedster. So he says, you can just go out and buy one as a tippy as opposed to actually building one. And I think it was Graham, the client, that said, well, I've seen they've built a 993 Speedster, and that's in the museum, and they only built one. And I think from there it just kind of snowballed into effect. And the first one that was built was Graham Argenson Speedster, which is a blue one, which is Tiptronic, and that was a turbo body car, 2-wheel drive, and yeah, that was the first one that was built. And again, from there it was obviously media and everything blew up, and it was the car that Porsche never really produced, and it was kind of the car that everyone was crying out for at that time. So it got a lot of attention, a lot of traction, and then from there it snowballed into the effect of everyone saying, if I want one, I'd like one of them. So like I say, we've built quite a few since. There's one in the UK, and there's a couple in Hungary and stuff like that. So they are dotted all over, and the next few cars are destined for Singapore, and one's destined for Switzerland. But yeah, they're very much cars that are used still as a day-to-day thing. A lot of the clients use them day in, day out, and because they've got such nice weather, they've got an excuse to use them. But that's exactly the same. We'll fly over and we'll spend a couple of weeks maintaining, going through and making sure they're happy with everything, rechecking everything. Any form of servicing work, suspension, disc, pads, tyres, that kind of stuff. So they kind of wait until that point of the year that we'll go over, and then we can spend 2 or 3 weeks and just blitz them one in, one out. It's a really busy time for us, but it's nice to see that they want us to, the people who built the car, to still keep on maintaining it and not necessarily taking it to somewhere that doesn't know the car or doesn't know how it should respond in different. So it's nice to see that they want us to, once we've built the car, not just to take it away and enjoy it, but to actually maintain it going forward as well. We've got like a rack on the far corner, all individual boxes with clip screws, brackets and stuff like that. And on any job that comes in, if it's got the wrong clip or bracket, we put it on. 9 times out of 10, we never charge for it because it's just got to be right. So I think that's kind of where we, not say differ from everyone else, because everyone else has got their own thing, but that's what we try and focus on. We want the cars to be as best as possible and not cost an arm and a leg, and keep people in love with the brand for as long as possible.